All right, I'm going to go ahead and officially kick us off this afternoon. My name is April Motley, and I am the communications lead for InCommon. Hello, and welcome to Getting IAM Done Better, Faster Together, our webinar, our installment of IAM Online for April. IAM Online is the Identity and Access Management webinar series brought to you by InCommon Internet 2. In just a moment, I'm going to turn it over to your moderator for this afternoon. But first, I want to note a couple of items. Looking at our agenda for today, we're going to have the welcome, which I'm doing. We'll have a presentation, and then we will hear from our panelists, and then we'll close with Q&A. So I want to make sure to let you know that this event is being recorded. The slides and the recording will be posted to our website, and you'll also receive the link to the recording and slides via email. Feel free to post messages in the chat. Just make sure when you're posting that your message is being sent to everyone. Once again, we are recording the webinar, and you will receive the link to the recording via email, and it will also be posted on our IAM Online YouTube channel soon after today's webinar. Without further ado, I'm happy to pass the virtual podium over to my esteemed colleague, Jean Horashevsky, InCommon Academy Director, and to kick off our presentation. Jean?
Yes, well, thank you, April. And hello, everyone. As April says, I'm the InCommon Academy Director, and I am delighted to be here with you. We have a very engaging hour lined up, and today we're going to be providing you with a brief overview of our Collaboration Success Program. And you'll also hear from two of our panelists today, Eric Coleman and Ann Takazan, who have participated in the program. So they will be sharing some of their highlights, and we'll have them introduce themselves in just a little bit. But before we dive into the program, I just wanted to start with telling you a little bit more about the broad range of learning and collaboration opportunities that InCommon has to offer. We'll start over on the left with Basecamp. For those of you who might be familiar, it's a 5-day virtual event that's designed specifically for those who are new to IAM, or maybe the Federation, or the InCommon Trusted Access Platform, or really all of the above. And it's a great place to start and an ideal entryway into InCommon, and also the fundamentals of identity access and management. And in fact, we have a Basecamp event coming right up in July 10th through the 14th. So if you're interested, or if members of your team might be interested, we'll tell you a little bit more about that at the bottom of this hour. We also have software trainings, and this is all about InCommon's Trusted Access Platform components. And these really facilitate secure and efficient collaboration within and between higher ed and research institutions. And we offer trainings on everything from Grouper to Shibboleth to Midpoint and CoManage. In fact, Midpoint, our training is starting next week. And we do have a training coming up for CoManage Registry on May 1st and 2nd. So if you're interested in that, please do check out our website. And our trainings typically take place in 2 seasons, the spring and the fall, and we'll be announcing some fall training dates coming up pretty soon. We also have other ways that people can get involved. We have an open multi-channel support through very robust Slack channels. And if you really want to get involved and learn about what others are doing, or to share your insights, or really have the ability to influence the work at a larger level, we really encourage you to join us at TechX, which is a multi-day event that really brings together a whole community of technology visionaries. And this year it's happening in September 18 through 22 in Minneapolis. And that's really where you can dive into camp and advanced camp and start to work really closely with the community. Today, we're really just focusing on the Collaboration Success Program, which really is an accelerator to support your IAM planning and your implementations. So, we talk a lot about community when we talk about collaboration success, and often people know InCommon because of our software or the Federation or Eduroam and our certificates, but really it's also about a very connected community, and knowing that solutions are easy to find, that you don't have to do it alone, and that you have resources at hand to really help you address your IAM challenges. And it's also really about making IAM connections, building your network, making friends, and then finding ways to give back to others. And that's truly the spirit of the Collaboration Success Program. It's about collaboration, people coming together to learn, to prepare, to implement, and then being able to share that right back and helping others move and advance as well in the same ways. To date, this program, we've had 5 program cycles, and we've had more than 30 unique participants. And in fact, 6 are joining us for a second time here. And you're really in good company if you join the Collaboration Success Program. With more than 30 unique participants, the numbers continue to climb, and we are getting ready to kick off our next season with our 6th cycle in August. Our class of 2023 is just wrapping up now, and you'll hear from 2 today. So, well, what is it? What do we mean by the Collaboration Success Program? So let's dive in just a little bit. The Collaboration Success Program really features a variety of benefits that help participants get up and running with their identity and access management plans. So this chart, there's a lot going on here, features a high-level glance at all of the program's key components. And it covers everything from learning to collaboration to different kinds of tools to access to subject matter experts. But the thing is here, this program is really designed to be modular so that participants can pick and choose the right tool, the right slot, the right activity that's really going to support their training and their planning efforts. So the way that we start this program is a kickoff, and we do that this year in August with a project planning deep dive. And that's where participants who join the program have a chance to talk about their IAM projects and what's going on for them, and really what they hope to take away from the program. And CSP community members and experts are on hand to help guide that train of thought, that program planning, that project planning, and be able to share some lessons learned. We also start to convene virtual workshops, and these are really designed for the participants to share their plans, to talk about what progress they've made, to talk about the barriers they might be facing, and also the things that they're learning, because it might be great to hear and help others who are maybe struggling or having the same opportunities as the others. All of our participants get added to a dedicated Slack channel, and there's a lot of folks that you get connected to. And this is a way to stay connected with the cohort itself, but also with CSP alumni and developers and instructors and other experts. And so all of those folks are always with you to answer questions or to have conversations. And if you decide to join the CSP program before July 10th, 2 individuals from your organization will have the opportunity to join our virtual base camp that I just mentioned, and the rest of your team can dive into the recorded content a little bit later after the fact as well. So what's more is that with your program fee, you'll also receive 8 complimentary training registrations, and those go toward our InCommon Trusted Access Platform series. So you can pick from Shibboleth or Grouper or Co-Manage or Midpoint trainings. And you'll also get discounts for training registrations even after those and beyond the 8 seats that come automatically with your program participation. Each participant also receives a hosted workbench, and that contains all of the Trusted Access Platform components, and they're all pre-wired and loaded with sample records. And that's really a great sandbox and gives you the opportunity to model your plans and explore use cases that you might be working on. Participants also have an opportunity to join our DevOps series, and you get to learn about DevOps basics, to work, what it takes to work in the cloud, and everything there is to know about why we're recommending containers. But I think the most valued feature of the CSP program are our office hours. And this is where we gather weekly to share progress, to discuss barriers, to ask developers questions, to hear from experts, to hear from alumni who are sharing best practices and things that they've learned, and all of which are informing your plans and how you're thinking about implementing your IAM solutions in your institution. And really, if you think about it, these collaborations really ensure that you're never alone in this process and as you're thinking about your projects. And even after your cohort is complete, as a participant, you remain within the program. You're a CSP alumni, you get still access to the Slack channels, and you are invited to attend the weekly office hours as well. So as you can see, this is really a feature-rich program, and it's broken up into different kinds of parts and modules that allow you to jump in where you need it to be able to kickstart and accelerate what your IAM plans are all about. So that's it in a very brief but holistic nutshell of what the CSP program is all about. So next up, we want you to hear a little bit more from some CSP participants. So I am going to get us going with our panelists today. I'd like to turn it over to each of them to introduce themselves. And Eric, how about if we start with you?
Sure, thanks, Jean. My name is Eric Coleman. I am the IAM architect with the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. We are the flagship campus of our University of Illinois system, a pretty good sized R1 research university located here in central Illinois. I'm part of a group of about 10 IAM engineers and specialists in our group that I would classify our maturity level as kind of somewhere between middle and advanced. We've got several things nailed down pretty good that we're pretty mature on, but we still have several gaps that we're still emerging. Part of the reason why we joined CSP, and we are currently running 3 of the Trusted Access Platform components: Grouper, Shibboleth, and to a small extent currently Midpoint. And I'll turn it over to Anne to introduce herself.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Good morning, everybody here from the West Coast. My name is Anne Takazon. I am the Interim Business Service Manager of Identity and Access Management at the University of Washington. We're an R1 school. I think our maturity level is we're pretty advanced, but aging, and more to come on that in our question and answer portion. Right now we're running Shibboleth, and we are in the CSP looking at Grouper and co-manage.
Great.
Back to you, Jean.
Yes, well, thank you. Great to have you both here. Thank you for joining us. We're excited to hear a little bit more about your experiences. So let's get to it. So our first question of the day here is, why did you get involved with Internet 2 and InCommon to begin with? And I'm wondering, Eric, if you would start us off with this one.
I sure can. Yeah, so our history with Internet 2 goes back quite a ways. In fact, we were one of the charter institutions to join Internet 2 back in '96, where originally it was more network centric. Our primary goal was to connect the research and education networks across all the different universities as best as we can to avoid the commercialization of the internet connections. And we were also charter members of the InCommon portion of Internet 2 when that middleware aspect was born. And I think everyone realized that the identity layer was just as important as the network layer. And we're also contributors to, longtime contributors to several of the InCommon working groups and committees. So I guess you could say our relationship with Internet 2 and InCommon is pretty well established.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you, Eric. You're a pioneer alongside with us here. Anne, how about you?
I'll echo a little bit of what Eric said. We have a long-standing history with Internet 2. One of the unique things about the University of Washington is that we shared a resource. Some of you might know or remember Bob R.L. Morgan. And so he was with the University of Washington and also with Internet 2 and doing a lot of great things for us. And as far as InCommon, they go together, right? So we definitely love to be involved with InCommon and want to have more of a presence there as we have had in the past. It's the morning, everybody here on the Pacific Coast, so I'll get into it.
Well, that's great. Thank you both. And I think, your involvement with internet too, and InCommon is great history and background. But, your two institutions are probably like many who might be listening in today on the webinar. And, some folks might be wondering, if they should consider this program, and just curious what might have led you to want to be part of the Collaboration Success Program when you joined. And maybe Anne, since you were last, maybe you can start us off with this question.
I sure can. Thanks, Jean. As I mentioned, we have a long history. And part of that long history is we have a group service that is aging, and we use a very customized version of Grouper. Last year, I attended this exact seminar, and I just remember thinking lots of things, but the two main things that are relevant are that, oh, so we all use this differently, which was a new thing for me, being somewhat new to identity and access management at the university level. And the other great takeaway was that I was thinking, so I get to be in the room with people that use this software differently than we do, and with the creators of this software. And I just thought, sign me up. How can I get involved? Point me in the right direction.
Yeah, that is a good point. And that is one of the intentions of the program, is to be able to sort of hear how others are doing it, and gleaning off of those kind of learnings as well. Eric, how about you? What led you to the Collaboration Success Program?
Yeah, well, we had the opportunity to join the very first CSP, which was back in 2018, and the timing was perfect because we had not yet deployed Grouper. We were only using Shibboleth at that point, but we were really looking at Grouper extensively as a potential way to kind of shore up and improve our access policy structure. And so we basically set out in that original CSP instance to deploy Grouper and Shibboleth using the new Trusted Access Platform Docker images that were being released at the time. And we really found a lot of value in the community support with that iteration, that we actually thought, why not give it another go? So this time around in the 2023 cohort, we want to kind of do the same thing, but this time with Midpoint. Our Midpoint involvement has been somewhat auxiliary at this point. Our system offices kind of use Midpoint for some limited identity record and password synchronization, but we wanted to kind of dive in and begin to evaluate Midpoint on our own, and knowing the value of the opportunity to have 8 seats at the training session, as well as the Basecamp resources, we thought were on its own just a pretty good perk for joining, but then also just being able to relate with other institutions that have been through that and give us some support on that was kind of what led us to join a second time around.
Well, great. Well, it's good to hear that you were able to come back and dive in for a different angle the second time around as well, and find it equally helpful as you thought about the plans for what you were implementing next. Speaking of which, as the program begins, each of the participants comes to the table to kind of discuss what is happening within their environment, what's happening within their institution, and what they might be not struggling with, but what are the opportunities, or what's going on, and what's the thing that they're working on, and how this program can kind of augment that. So Anne, I'm going to turn it back over to you, because you've given us a really great high-level view of what drew you here, but maybe for those listening today, knowing some of the nuances of the actual CSP project work that you've been working on would be helpful.
Yes, for sure. Thank you. Mentioning that we have an aging service and retirement of a lot of key people. So part of that is what led us to the CSP as well, learning about this tool in a new light with new people. And what we found once we started digging into it was that this highly customized version that we were using, we just didn't want to invest the time or thought processes into figuring out how to upgrade that. So we decided to use this time to deploy the latest version of Grouper in a container in the cloud. And so that has really been our main focus, and that's helping us out. The CSP is helping us out with that Grouper project. At the University of Washington, we're also working on our other access management platform and trying to bring that up and have them both be containerized and in the cloud. And so being part of this collaboration has helped us figure out that strategy, not just for Grouper, but for all of our access management stuff here at the University of Washington. The other thing that we're looking at is a co-manage. And so our part of the CSP for that is really a systems analysis. We are looking to see what co-manage registry and match provides, as well as figuring out what our homegrown identity registry does, and seeing where they fit together and where the limitations might be and how we can get around those limitations. And so hopefully that's going to end with a great recommendation to our executive leadership about a path forward for us.
Well, great. Sounds like you have a lot to consider, and it's been a good journey for you for sure.
Yes.
Eric, what about your project? That you kind of highlighted it too, but maybe you can offer some more details.
Yeah, right. I mean, this time around, our primary deliverable was to essentially build a prototype midpoint instance in the cloud using our existing deployment processes that we had kind of originally refined back in our first CSP iteration. And really with the goal in mind was with this prototype instance was to set out to familiarize ourselves with how to integrate midpoint with our source databases, our source systems of record, as well as potential target output systems such as Active Directory or other systems that need to be provisioned and such. So we utilized another CSP resource, the CSP workbench that actually is provided to us, which essentially was a sandbox of all the environments that allowed us to kind of get our hands dirty playing around with midpoint and experiencing the admin console. Basically, the idea being is that we wanted to get to know more about midpoint, how it behaved, and how it interacted. So one of the unanticipated side benefits is we got certainly a greater understanding with how midpoint actually can kind of work all together with the other trusted access platform products, particularly Grouper and even co-manage, which was something that really wasn't even on our radar to this point. So I think we've really, looking back, I think we got definitely what we wanted out of that and what we sought after. Since we didn't really have a very specific production level outcome from that, I think that's worked out for us. But basically, just to get that familiarity, determining the processes of how we're going to interact with midpoint, and eventually trying to compare that to alternative solutions that might be available commercially or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, thank you for sharing those details. Really interesting. And in fact, I'm just wondering if those of you listening, if this is sparking any questions, or if this is resonating with you and you do have some questions for Eric and Anne, please do use our Q&A feature in the function here within Zoom, because we can also take a few questions to address what you might be curious about. But let's move on to one of our final questions here, and that is, excuse me. One more time, what's next for your IAM team? So Eric, why don't, since you were just talking a little bit about, what you've been exploring, what's next for where you're taking things?
Yeah, well, the CSP project actually really was just, has become kind of the launching point for a much larger initiative, what we kind of call the IGA initiative. It's a project that we've got both to develop the actual governance processes as well as the governance tools. So the next thing we want to do is try to come up with a more maybe a more specific score-based evaluation deliverable. So taking midpoint, not just evaluating the product itself and its capabilities, but also the people and the processes and the training that are going to be required in order to assess that kind of what I would call the total cost of what it's going to take for us to implement midpoint. In other words, do we, can we find out if it really is saving us money in the long run, or is that a viable option for us to proceed and moving forward? And we're pretty confident that that is kind of the track we're on. But we, the larger picture is that we've got these efforts that we're calling, people-centric security. So we really want to get these IGA tools in front of the departments or in front of even the actual end users to empower them to do all sorts of stuff themselves, getting the unit security context access to be able to see what their constituents might have access to, ultimately changing how our whole access governance is actually modeled. And so we tend to stop at the automation or try too hard to automate everything and trying to account for every single exception scenario, but we really need to think about some of the ad hoc fine-grained work that needs to be done that's often manual and try to improve the process by deploying something like this.
Wow. Thank you. That's great. And sounds like you're considering a lot, and I'm sure others are probably having similar things that they need to consider on their campus too, in terms of total cost to implement and what it takes. So really, really interesting. Anne, how about you? What's going on with your IAM team and what's next for them?
Yes, thanks. So as far as for Grouper goes, we're a little bit in the same boat as Eric mentioned. We're developing our roadmap and we're getting together our governance around access and figuring out how we want to do that, how we want to integrate our current Grouper groups to this new version, and what it's going to take to, of course, start laying this out to the university. Also, hopefully we will be included in next year's CSP to learn more about Grouper. We're at a point now where we would love to utilize the workbench and learn more about the behavior and have a better just understanding of that. And also be able to contribute what we've learned in deploying our version this year. For co-manage, we would love to be part of a pilot. We would love to contribute to InCommon and have a better presence there. As I mentioned, there are a lot of similarities between what our homegrown system does and what co-manage registry and match does. And we'd love to learn more about that and the ways that we can utilize it and where we need some gaps to help fill what we do and what co-manage registry and match do.
Well, great. And it sounds like both of you have, been through a lot, and as CSP alumni now, you will have other things to share and saying yes. You have more to share back, to share back with the community as well for folks who are interested in being part of this program. I'm not seeing any questions that I can tell, so certainly want to make sure that if there's any questions that are out there, please speak up. But really, this is really, thank you both for answering those questions. I think hearing your stories has been really helpful today. And this is really our chance to just elevate the community again, that the Collaboration Success Program is really about getting some help and getting advice and hearing from others and sharing experiences with each other so that there's more opportunities to learn. I do see that there is a question. Let me just tackle this for you here. Our guest has asked, what providers and platforms are you using to run your containers? And do you have engineers dedicated to the infrastructure, or do they manage infrastructure and the applications? So Eric and Anne, I don't know if either one of you have an answer to that one. So what?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. And actually, yeah, that's a great question. The our primary goal initially, and even with the first CSP instance, was to use AWS Fargate, which essentially is a hostless version of their Docker management platform. So we don't have dedicated engineers dedicated or trained on managing containerized infrastructures. So we took it upon ourselves to essentially kind of create sort of a vertical approach to where the identity and access management team are managing that infrastructure directly, or at least with some assistance with some DevOps engineers on the software development side. But we don't have we don't have a Kubernetes or a OpenShift or anything like that running. So we were kind of left for ourselves to sort of build something that way, and so that's the route we chose.
Great. Thanks, Eric. Anne, anything to contribute to that very same question?
Yes, just a little different perspective. I think we spend a lot of time trying to figure that out for the IAM team here at UW. And so there are dedicated engineers and DevOps people that are we're working on this to get us where we wanted to go.
Gotcha.
So just a different perspective. I think that we were trying to figure out how to do it, and we have the people to do it, whereas Eric was trying to figure out how to do it with his people.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, thank you both. And thank you for elevating that question. We do have another one from one of our guests. And the question is, can you speak more about the dialing up of midpoint and what it is replacing?
So in our case, at least the vision and strategy as far as what midpoint would replace is we're running a fairly old entity registry based on IBM, the old IBM Tivoli Directory Integrator suite, which I think is now called Security Directory Integrator or whatever, which is now about to hit end of life. So we need to replace the entity registry portion of that. But at the same time, being a more modern platform gives us the more true IGA tool set in the sense of being able to do more ubiquitous access provisioning, or I should say account provisioning, and access certification and requests, something that we actually, that is kind of a weakness for us right now. We just don't have that infrastructure at all. So looking at midpoint to not only replace legacy software, but actually giving us new capabilities as well.
Great. Well, thank you, Eric. And hopefully that helps some of the folks that are listening in today, and if they're thinking about similar things or how to replace legacy systems as well. Any other questions out there? This is the chance to pop them into the Q&A function. And all right, here we go. Another question, broad question about grouper. Sorry, I'm going to read that again. Grouper-based groups. Do you create a group for every academic course? Are all these groups available? And do you track usage? Who wants to tackle that one? Eric, I see you nodding.
We run Grouper, and we right now do not have any courses in our production Grouper instance. However, we do have a project on track to do exactly that. We currently have a project or a service that provides those course groups in as Active Directory LDAP groups. But as you can imagine, very unwieldy and difficult to maintain in that respect. But basically, the thought process there was that we would have, in trying to stay within the bounds of FERPA laws, we would have a catalog of those base groups available, but you wouldn't necessarily be able to access those unless you had what they call legitimate educational need to access those groups. So not only would we have the infrastructure to create those all the way down to the, not only the term, but the course and even the class section level, we certainly have to layer on top of that a pretty complicated permissions infrastructure in order to make sure that people only have access to what they need.
Great. Anything about that one, Anne, that you wanted to tack on to about grouper-based groups?
Yes, we do have course groups. I can't remember what the other part of that was, but and we do the access permissioning. Eric, it's great that you're mentioning that, because we just went through kind of a little bit of an audit of our access policy around our course groups and FERPA, and thankfully we passed our own internal stuff with our great documentation and how we're doing that work.
Yes, it's that complicated permission structure where we get into circular discussions. Thank you, Anne. We do have another follow-up question regarding Midpoint. Have you discovered any limitations in the account provisioning capabilities of Midpoint? You mentioned AD. What other platforms would Midpoint provision for you?
Yeah, I mean, really, we don't have a set in stone list necessarily. I mean, AD is our one-stop shop for all things directory. So we don't have any other LDAP instances. So that's going to be one of the primary provisioning targets for Midpoint. One sort of thing we discovered in the midst of our trial was that the learning curve is quite steep for working with Midpoint, and what would maybe seem in theory to be a relatively simple provisioning configuration to just talk to AD ended up being a little trickier than we thought. And so again, leaning on CSP members and even having access to those subject matter experts kind of got us over the hump there. I suppose one sort of frustrating limitation that we found was that that we still have yet to resolve is that Midpoint only seems to talk to AD over SSL LDAP as opposed to using just TLS LDAP. So we kind of wish, because the fact that we don't expose the SSL ports out into the cloud to where Midpoint can see it, we were really hoping we wanted to be able to leverage the start TLS method of authenticating to LDAP, and we couldn't quite get that working yet. We kind of shelved that until we kind of move into the next phase of the project. But it's just kind of maybe a simple anecdote to illustrate that that we have to work closely to try to make sure that we exploit all those capabilities and get them working properly. As far as other platforms that we might provision to Midpoint, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I mean, we have several other things that have account provisioning, but they already have methods by which they do it. Probably the one that comes to mind is we have Box, where we have accounts pre-provisioned out to Box, as well as Google, the Google, whatever the replacement is called, the Google Suite. But those Google accounts are actually also used for Google Cloud Platform. So those potentially would be the two big areas. We also have kind of this dilemma of overlapping functionality with like Grouper, because Grouper has some provisioning capabilities too. So we have to decide now how those kind of merge together and who gets to do what, right? Because both can actually provision Box or Google accounts. So we have to kind of work through that part of it.
Well, thank you for that, and good to hear how you're addressing multiple components for integration, and also good to hear that the CSP program really helped you get over a hump here and there in what you were working on. And was there anything about that question that you wanted to contribute to?
We have not talked about Midpoint here, so not at this time. Thanks.
No worries. All right, well, thank you for all those questions, everyone. Really good to hear. And we do maybe have one more, if you're up for it. One last one. Are you using Grouper to implement ABAC and RBAC? And if so, would you give a brief overview of a use case and how simple or complex they were to implement?
We are using ABAC. We essentially source all of our Grouper user data for now, actually, from our directories. So basically, we have a large amount of rich attribute information stored on the user as part of the entity registry. And so we're basically building grouper groups based on the values of those attributes. And so, out of the box, we were able to produce scores of groups based on those attributes. And those in turn can be used for access policy groups. So that's been a pretty attractive feature for us for the grouper side of things.
Great. And did you come off mute there?
Oh, I did, just to say that I am unable to answer that question at this point.
Okay. This might be a follow-up here, and wondering, Eric and Ann, if you want to answer this one. How can SBC assist if we want to implement something like CyberArk instead of grouper and co-manage?
What's SBC?
I'm not sure. So we might have to pause on that one, because I don't know either.
Yeah, I'm not positive. However, I would just go on a limb and say that CyberArk, I could see CyberArk being used as more of like an access control mechanism, like an enforcement mechanism, but you still maybe need to derive groups and such for accessing that. So I think there'd be a place at the table, a seat at the table for both of those products. I don't think it's an either or situation there.
Mm-hmm. Well, great. And there's one additional question in the box here, and I see April, my colleague, is typing an answer, and the question is, how many regional state network participants have gone through CSP? And I don't have that number on my fingertips, but maybe April is answering that as we speak. So thank you, April, if you have some answers there. All right, everyone. Well, we're gonna move toward wrapping today's session up. So, really, as you can tell, CSP is really about connecting with community and being able to problem solve and move things along together, and having access to all different kinds of people and being able to share stories and lessons learned as well. So what's next? So here we are, and wondering if you're interested in joining the CSP family. And if you are, please check out our website to learn more about the program and anything that we didn't cover in today's webinar session. So you can get there at incommon.org/academy/CSP. And our expression of interest window is now open. So if you are interested in participating, there's also a brief questionnaire that you can fill out. And I don't know if that link, April, is easy enough to drop in the chat here, but it's certainly something that you might take a snapshot of if you're interested. But if you fill that out, you can let us know that you are interested in the program, and just know that it is not a commitment whatsoever, but it's your way to let us know that you're interested and that you want to learn more. And what we do is we set up a time to dive in a little bit more deeply to ask you more questions about what you're working on and what might help you, and to see if this program could be a match for you. So we'll also help you if you're ready to sign up too. So please check out either of those links if you're ready. And I think April did submit at least the CSP link, website link in the chat, as well as our expression of interest form. So if you are interested, please let us know, and we'll try to connect with you and schedule some time. All righty. Well, I think I'm going to move on, and I think I'm going to turn it back over to April to wrap us up here.
Yes, thank you, Jean. In fact, many thanks to you, Eric and Ann, for a great presentation. And to all of you who attended, posted questions, or just listened in, we very much appreciate your being here today. Before we sign off, just a couple of things I want to note. If you have thoughts about today's program, we really encourage you to complete our Zoom survey. We value your feedback, so please take a moment to do that. It's just a very brief survey. If you have general feedback about IAM Online, feel free to reach out to me directly. Also want to let you know about our next program. IAM Online will take place next month on Wednesday, May 17th. Where we will be talking about InCommon's future, get in on the discussion. you'll have the opportunity to learn about a strategic planning exercise that we are in the process of kicking off for InCommon. If you have ideas, if you'd like to join the ranks of IAM Online presenters, we do have a submission form that's available on our website, but please submit your ideas either for your own presentation or something that you'd like someone else to present. Once again, want to remind you that you will receive a link to the recording for today's presentation. It'll also be posted on our website, as will the slides. With that, thank you again, everyone, for joining us. We will see you next month. Have a great rest of the day.